Hey guys, we're here with Derek who went undefeated first place at Side Deck Remote Regional. Congrats with Snake Eye Fire King. Obviously, tier 0 deck at this point, but you know, I guess we'll go over your list as well as some tips for the mirror.
Yeah.
Alright, well, I'll just pass it over to you.
Okay. So, I'm going to start with just the Fire King cards. 1 Grunix, 1 Ponix, Arvada, and 3 Kirin. Just to start, these are kind of bricky. Some people would consider cutting this to 2, and honestly, I might do it because honestly, I side 1 out almost every game. Almost every game I'm siding 1 out, but these are kind of what makes the Fire King cards, the deck so good, is that this card in general, because it can pop non-targeting and not a lot of things can respond. And I want to shout out my girl for grabbing these when she was in Amsterdam. She got me 3 European structure decks.
Let's go.
Shout out to her. The Snake Eyes cards, the best cards in the game right now. 3 Ash, 1 Oak, 2 Poplar, 1 Flamberge, and 3 Adiabel Star. I think most of this is standard. Oak helps you play through Droll, and I think maybe this is just something that people might wonder about. I guess I played 3 Wish, 1 for just ways to play, and 2 for ways to play through Ash, Imperm, and other hand traps. It's like, so if you play 1 Witch, you're kind of limiting the ways you can extend past when you get stopped on Ash. So, and it makes the field spell, I'm actually playing the Snake Eyes field spell, a lot better because you're more likely to draw the 2 card combos, right? So I've got that, and then my monster hand trap lineup: Ash, Droll, Nib. Ash, a lot of people were considering cutting, but in my testing, it's good against everything else, and then for the Fire Mirror specifically, it can be okay. Like, you just have to read their hand and kind of understand exactly where it's going to choke them. Ash, on the Ash effect to summon, is one big part where they can often choke. Or if they're going to original early, you can keep them off of Fire Kings, depending on how they play it, right? Some people will go Appaloosa first and that won't work, so it depends. This slot I was considering for like the past 3 weeks. I had no idea what this was going to be. It was Veiler, it was Econ, it was Cosmic, and everything didn't feel good. Veiler was amazing into the mirror, but it felt like when I got talents on Veiler, it was often not impactful enough and they were able to play through. And then they got to see my hand as well. But and sometimes even draw it 2 and keep playing. But if I drolled them, it was like, yes, they cuts them off of Fire King stuff, as well as like, they don't get to draw 2 off talents, and oftentimes my hand is enough that even if they take out a card, then it's often okay. Nib's just the best card into like any other hand trap, and then it's good. I also played Veiler. I mean Imperm, sorry. Nib's just crazy going first. I can explain something about in a bit later about the tips around if I draw Nib going first. Obviously 3 wanted, 1 original. I didn't feel like I needed any more. I know some people are trying to. I disagree. 3 bonfire, and then 1 temple. This allows you to kind of. It helps the redundancy when you have wanted plus any other Snake Eyes access. It's kind of like, it helps you put Oak into the graveyard so you can help play through. It makes your Flamberge. So most of the time I was doing the combos where you would have Flamberge and Princess would threaten to summon Arvada. If you're not really playing this and setting up Oak to be used later, then if they nib you on Princess Flamberge, you end up with the 2 level 1s and then the token, and it's kind of awkward from there. If you're playing this and you've set up Oak, Flamberge can summon back Oak +1, and then Oak summons back another one. Now you have 4 bodies, and it's actually solid. Plus, it's free sends for the Snake Eye cards and original, as well as it helps you play around Droll a lot better. And I'll explain that in a little bit. And obviously, talents. Everyone's trying to hand trap you. Everyone's trying to end on Appaloosa, and this will just help you rip apart their board and rip their hand, or draw 2 if you need. Then, just the Island and the Sanctuary. These cards are crazy. A lot of people don't use the second effect of Island to summon a Winged Beast. A lot of the time, if they don't kill you and you have Ponix comes back to your hand through Oak or through something else, you can use Island's effect to special summon Ponix, and that's just a free body. It's got a second effect. Nobody ever uses it. Sanctuary is like, okay, it's a free send, and I just sided it out every single time going second. For Link ones, Link Karibo, obviously, this card's actually broken. It plays around everything. I've used Island to pop this just to search a monster, and then normal summon Oak on a turn 3, just so that I can play around Imperm like this. So don't be afraid. You don't have to always pop a fire with Fire King Island. Popping this just to get in your graveyard is okay. Anima, this slot was kind of like very I was jumping back and forth between Doolittle, Celine, Axis Code, things like this, and I felt like this just helped me when Zealantis, they had certain board states where, for example, if they didn't use their Grunig's effect in graveyard yet and they're kind of waiting for you to pop their princess, you can just rearrange their board with Zealantis and then anima their last monster. So that kind of helps you play around that. Obviously the link twos, IP, SP. These are self-explanatory. I think a big one with this in the mirror is when you is if you kind of get stuck. For example, on Saturday I played and I got Veiler on Ash and then I got Veiler on Diabell Star. I went Link Karibo into SP and I banished my Ash, and my opponent was like, why? Like he was just so confused. But Hida and Dark are too strong in this format, so if in the mirror you want to be using this if you can, or obviously you want to use things to banish from their graveyard, but if you're going first and you get stopped, it's important to get rid of your resources that they could steal, right? Speaking of stealing, we've got the 2 Charmers. These are too broken, way too broken. You have Nightmare Phoenix. I think this is another huge thing in this format. It's like this deck is pretty easy to force out back row with, for example, Nguyen. But this one just helps. It just makes it a lot easier without using Island. For example, against my branded opponent, he had set 2. One of them I knew was branded in red, and branded like plays Super Poly and Droplets, so it's kind of obvious what it was. So I could immediately do this without having to burn my other resources to get to Island, Grunix, and all that. I could just go Ash, Poplar, and then just straight to Nightmare Phoenix. This also helps you kill when your opponent has no monsters or you're playing Flu. I felt like when I played Flu, against Flu, they would have an Eaglin on field, and then like you can't Zealantis OTK them because the birds will get banished by their own effect, and then you can't summon back Princess. But your Zealantis can pop your own cards as well. So you can attack with the Nightmare Phoenix, attack with Zealantis, and then pop your Nightmare Phoenix, and then Sunlight, and then Raging Phoenix will come back. So that's huge with this card. Obviously, you got Sunlight Wolf for recursion. You use this to get back the Nguyen if you can. Otherwise, it's just I often used it for free pops on Island, or even adding back Ash against Branded. 2 Princess, because like I mentioned before, I was often playing in a way that would the board state would be Flamberge, Princess threatening to summon back Arvada. So they kind of have to nib you there, and when they nib you there, you're either bluffing a second Princess or you actually have one. So I know that some people will bluff it. I don't take that. I don't feel like taking that gamble. Ambler Whale, this is about the best thing you can do, because since Princess locks you to fire, this is about the best thing you could do turn 1, just to get Princess off the field. Zealantis, obviously for the OTK. I think a lot of people really forget about that it says all co-linked monsters on the field. So my opponents, some of my fire opponents, they left their Ambler Whale on the field and then summoned back their Princess. And then my Zealantis would just rearrange the field, make their Princess and their Zealantis and their Ambler Whale co-linked, and then I popped 4 monsters. And they're like, wait, I need to check the language on this. Yeah, it says all in the field, and they're just all confused. This happened like 3 times. They're just lost. But then Appaloosa, obviously it helps you play around everything going first. And then against certain matchups like Lab, it makes it very hard for them to use the furnitures, all that stuff. Heat Soul, this I really dislike. The only reason I played it is because it is a fire target for Ambler Whale, since when you pop with Princess, you can't always bring back IP because this locks you to fire. So it's a fire. I was playing Doolittle, but I didn't really feel like I was using it the best that I could. I didn't really understand all the lines with Doolittle quite well back then. And obviously Raging Phoenix for the combo for the OTK. For the side deck, essentially this was like a 6-card side deck. I sided in like 6 cards all day. Most of my matches I 2-0'd, so I never really went first. So all I sided in was really this. I know I mentioned how Ash was okay. Sometimes I would side out Ash for Bell just because it felt a little bit better. But even then, a lot of the time I would just side in D6, maybe even keep in Ash, depending on how my opponent was comboing on turn 1. I think it's important to note what kind of combo they're doing, just so you know if they're choking. A lot of people would link off their Flamberge, and then that would be their choke point. So I knew that's when I could side in Bell. But if I knew that people were kind of chain blocking their Flamberge with example Poplar, because that's what the field spell allows you to do, is that you can chain block Flamberge with the Poplar, putting back the Flamberge. This Ghost Spell is going to do almost nothing. So that's what I really went and sided in. The other card I sided in when I didn't 2-0 my opponent was this card. It's just too good. I think that a lot of people might say that yes, Cosmic's everywhere in the format, and that this is not going to stick. It's a continuous spell. You should play like something like Different Dimension Ground. But my thinking on this is that it's just so strong. It stops talents. It stops the take cards. It takes top Soul Release. This is the reason I'm not playing Soul Release. I think too many people are playing this to be playing Soul Release. And it's a Cosmic Magnet. If they're Cosmicing this, they're not Cosmicing Island. That's how I feel. I played Lucas Sacco round 2, and he almost killed me through this. So I might change it. And then he left it on the field. I killed him with it still on my field, but he almost killed me and then left it on my field. I put in Dark Ruler. This was Soul Release for the longest time. It was Soul Release, it was Shaddoll Fusion. But in the end, I was like, I don't really need much for the mirror. I feel like you can just kind of just outplay your opponent for the most part. A lot of people are kind of still new to the deck, and I think that my philosophy might change later, but against Voiceless, against random combo decks, this came in. 2 Lightning Storms. I didn't side this against the mirror, and I only ever sided in against my Pearly opponent, and it paid off because he had Fissure. I played him in the finals, and this card also, I only ever sided in against the Pearly mirror, and then it also cooked him both times. Every time I saw it, because it's searchable, it's too good. They either have to Ash or imperm my Snake Eyes Ash, or it's just over for them. So other tips I wanted to share is that this card is just too good in the fact that you can set up the Oak to bring back with the Flamberge. I think I already mentioned that, but as well as when you're playing, some of your hands will start with the Witch, right? And if you have enough hand traps in your deck, you don't really need to be playing Fire King, for example. I'll explain what I mean, but when you go Witch and you use Original, right? You summon your Ash, and your options here are Poplar or Ponix. Poplar or Ponix here. If you add Ponix here, you're gonna hard lose to Droll because this does nothing into Droll. Because you'll summon it, you won't search Sanctuary, you won't search Phoenix, nothing. But when you search Poplar, say you do get Drolled, that's just full Snake Eyes combo, Flamberge IP, you know how it is. But if you don't get Drolled, you can just play pure Snake Eyes with the field spell. So I think if you have other hand traps, because if this is your only playable, then you probably have other hand traps, and I think that's one big reason why the field spell should be considered. And in the mirror, the reason that I find that a lot of my opponents kind of messed up is that they know that Princess locks them to fires, right? And what I would do is I would essentially force them to Princess me before I fully committed, because then they can't nib me. The nib is like the only thing I'm afraid of before this. So you could force it with things like Dark. I feel like this is underrated for forcing out Princess, because people assume. Well, obviously, I don't have searches for this, but when you summon their IP, you're threatening to give yourself an indestructible Princess, which is a lot of advantage just by itself. So this is one way I've been forcing out Princesses, and then they can't nib me. You could do the same thing with Hida. Obviously, if you Hida them and they Princess you there, then you get a search, and 2, their Princess is on the field, and then they can't nib you. Nib is like the biggest thing when you're trying to play around the board. Another thing related to that is that sometimes I believe that hand knowledge is very important in the mirror. So if my hand is, for example, Nib Kieran Ash, I won't show them the Kieran in my hand. I'll just do my combo, and then I'll give them a false sense of security by summoning the Princess to my field. A lot of people will see this. Some people don't know that. Some people will forget that you can nib, but let's imagine like they do know that I can't nib them. They miss the fact that I can just Princess Kieran it away and then just nib them. So I'll get all my follow-up from Flamberge, everything like that, and then they don't see this coming. So I think it's important that you should know that, do they have a Kieran in their hand? You should still be playing around nib. This is not 100% safety net, right? Some people might consider it that, but as soon as this is off the field, it's free game to get nib. Again, you should be using cards like Sunlight Wolf and SP to be kind of banishing the resources in your graveyard so that you do not get punished by Charmers. Charmers are the most broken thing in the game right now. Any monster is half a Charmer already, and they put so much pressure on the field. If you just have nothing for them to steal or nothing relevant for them to steal, yeah, there are combos to add back the Ash and the Oak and just leave a Poplar. Like this is very, 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 very important in the mirror. And the last tip is that this deck generates so much advantage that you should just be looking to kill them on turn 2. You should not be looking to kind of grind them out. Like, the grind game is kind of irrelevant. That's why I disagree with 2 Island, 2 Grunix, anything like that, because when you're in a grind game, you're already losing if you went second. There will almost always be a way to kill them going second, and you should be looking on the lookout for that. Even if you lose a bunch of times doing it, I lost a whole bunch of times in the past couple weeks. I finally figured out in the past week or so about what I should be doing. Yeah, that was how I felt about it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again so much for the deck profile and some tips. Any last shoutouts?
Shoutouts. I'll shout out my Yugi bros. I got Yusuf, Kareem, shout out for top 8 in the remote. Hamza, my brother Darian, Emad, Mert, Justin, all those guys. Hamza, obviously. And then again, shout out my girl for getting me these European Fire Kings.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, thank you.